So a very warm welcome. Today, I will present the Neola Medical Q3 report for 2023. I will first talk a bit about the business and where we're at, and then our CFO, Gyllenberg, will talk about more of the financial details. So a very warm welcome and thank you for your interest in Neola Medical. So as the season now shifts during this third quarter, we are continuing our focus and very intensive work ahead, especially for our market launch in the US. We are expanding and establishing our presence with new collaborative academic partners such as Stanford University, the top one within neonatology in the world. We have also done both formal and informal discussions with the Food and Drug Administration in the US and regulatory experts and key opinion leaders within the field. So we're now very well advanced in our route to market in the US. We have also during this quarter enhanced our trademark protection in the US, and this is a very important market strategy for our positioning on the US market, as this is now our most important market. So we proceed with our preparations, and we also increase our network and presence in Europe by participating at important conferences, especially focusing within respiratory challenges for preterm-born infants. It was especially pleasuring for us to hear about the latest independent clinical study results with our medical device Neola that was presented at one of these biggest conferences in neonatology just in September. So I will talk a bit more about that in detail. And furthermore, so I would like to say that we feel some wind in the sails and that the doors are really opening up for us now in the US when Stanford has selected Neola Medical as their Impact One company, meaning a company that can really make a large impact in the lives of babies from day one in care. So we're really proud about that. In combination with that, we now have very large clinical study data from Ireland showing that our technology is very well presented for monitoring the lungs of preterm-born infants. So today, myself and Christian are going to present. As you know, I'm CEO for Neola Medical now since 2019. So I've been 5 years with the company, and it's been fantastic years where we have really gone from a research phase at Department of Atomic Physics, and that group, just got a professor in that group just got the Nobel Prize in Physics. So we're coming from a very, very strong academic foundation, and now during the past couple of years have really integrated that technology and that science into a breakthrough new medical device that we're now taking to patients and market. So I would say that Sweden, as it is at its best with very high academic research, that is also now being commercialized. So just looking an overview of Neola Medical, where we're at, we're still focusing on the neonatal intensive care respiratory device market. It is a market that is still growing very healthy and is expected to be worth $3 billion in 2030. We are also addressing a very great clinical need and demand. So the clinical benefits of Neola greatly exceeds those of current monitoring methods such as chest X-ray and blood sampling. So we're coming with a new technology that is so needed by the infants and the neonatologists. We have also built in a very attractive business model already from start. So we have a classic razor blade strategy where we are selling the medical device, but also then disposables that are the probe sets on the baby's chest, that is really allowing us to get that leverage in our revenue model. The technology is now proven, and as per the results that was presented by the Irish research team on a 100-baby study just now in September, we can feel quite confident that the technology is really working the way it should. It's very safe for the infants, and it's appropriate for lung monitoring. So that is great independent data that we now have as a solid ground to stand on. And then also we continue to build the company. We are growing healthy with our team. We have great experts within the team, and also a board of directors with vast experience in commercialization of innovation, especially in the US. And we are addressing a very important clinical need, as it's as many as 1 in 10 babies that is born too soon and then may depend on neonatal intensive care for their survival. So we're talking about the second most common cause of death for children under the age of 5 today, so it's after pneumonia. So number 2 here, and it's the cause of death for 1.1 million preterm born babies every year, especially the respiratory failures, that is the leading cause of death for preterms. So to monitor the respiratory challenges is the most important task for hospitals and care today in order to save more babies, but also to save them for a healthier life without severe disabilities. Because today, so many babies are lying too long with their complications, which is resulting in a lot of brain damage, sight impairment, and problems with their movement. So we have a very important task here to really ensure that we upgrade today's standard of care. And from a market perspective, this is a very interesting market. It's a huge market where only in the US there are 30,000 NICU care places, which means beds in neonatal intensive care, where minimum 50 to 70% our research with US neonatologists shows should have a Neola next to the bed. So this is a huge market. For those investors who have been with us for a couple of years now, can also see that this number has increased quite significantly from the last data we presented. So this is brand new published data that we now have gone from roughly 20,000 beds in neonatal intensive care units in the US to 30,000 beds. And this is a growth that we can expect to see because in the US currently there is a big focus on neonatal intensive care. There are also special initiatives from the American Food and Drug Administration to get more technology into the care of preterm born babies. And it's because the United States is specifically suffering from a very high rate of preterm birth. So compared to Sweden, we have 6% of all our babies being born preterm. In the US is 10.5% of all babies. And that comes from the fact with a lot of lifestyle disease, but also the continued success of fertility treatments that leads to more women having babies when they're over 40 years old, which is a big risk factor for having a baby born preterm, but also the amount of now twins and triplets that comes out of these fertility treatments that are also a risk factor for being born preterm. And we see a continued growth in fertility treatments in the US, and that's why we can also say quite safely that this is a clinical need that's going to grow. It's also a patient focus that is continued to be very high on the agenda in the US. And we're coming with a technology that is really breakthrough into the current care of preterm born infants. So what we have in the care today, and what the neonatologists have to monitor the lungs, are really methods that are indirect and not focusing on continuous monitoring of the lungs. So we have some pulse oximetry that is showing the overall oxygenation in the body. We also have then chest X-ray that is done on a routine basis. So chest X-ray is something that the doctors definitely want to decrease and avoid as much as possible with these babies because of the potential negative effects later in life with the high exposure to radiation. But also it's just a snapshot of what's going on in the lungs. And that's why we are now getting so much attention, even then from the Stanford neonatologist, for our new breakthrough monitoring device that is for the first time allowing neonatologists to monitor the lungs of these preterm-born babies continuously and then directly see when complications arise, so that they can save more babies and take action much faster. And being fast is really the key in order to save more babies. So it's very rare that brand new technologies like this is coming to market, and we are very welcomed by the neonatology community worldwide for our innovation. So in practice, this is now what Neola looks like. We are ready with the product as such. So our medical device is now developed according to all rules and regulations, both to have granted a market approval to sell in the US, but also according to all European regulations. And what the doctors can see here on the screen is that in real time, they can follow right lung and left lung respectively and see the free oxygen gas concentration, but also the lung volume and how that develops over time. So a sudden change here, like a sudden drop, would mean, for example, a lung collapse. Which is then something they want to treat immediately with changing the respirator settings and start to have life support initiatives for the baby. This is a breakthrough and very highly patented technology, and we own all patents related to this technology in terms of using it in a clinical setting. And the technology behind it is called gas in scattering media absorption spectroscopy. If we're looking then on what actually we are delivering to the hospitals with our medical device, it's mainly three things: a very fast detection of pulmonary complications that then can prevent further major morbidities. We are aiming to prove that we have a decrease in number of days in this very expensive neonatal intensive care unit, which is a big incentive for the American hospitals because they are reimbursed on a higher level the first 2 days they have a baby in intensive care, and that's why they have an incentive to really make babies healthier, discover complications sooner, to be able to decrease that number of days that each baby spends in neonatal intensive care, because then they can increase the turnover of the babies and have more babies coming into the clinic where they have a higher reimbursement. But then also this is a very personnel intense care today. So we are aiming to show that we can also decrease time for visual observation by the nurses. So today for the sickest babies you have in the US care, 1 nurse per baby, just looking at the baby, trying to see what's going on. For the not so sick babies, you still have 1 nurse per 2 babies looking at the baby. So this is a way for us to come in with brand new technology that can really help get the nurses back to other tasks in the care for the neonates. Then coming back to our focus for 2023, we are working within 3 specific areas. Number 1 is the technical verification and clinical validation. That means all of the technical studies and clinical, preclinical, and human factor studies that we're doing now in order to form the data that goes into the FDA in the US and to the authorities in Europe. The other part, number 2, is regulatory work. So this year we're spending a lot of time with so-called pre-submissions to the FDA, which means that we're sending in our protocols for our studies and our study strategy, plan, and timings to the FDA to have discussions with them. And I will talk a bit more about that in detail, but we can see that we've had a number of pre-submissions this year and a very good conversation with the FDA, both informal and formal. So we now have a good perspective of the requests that the FDAs have for our studies, and also what they would like to see as we're coming to market and do further studies. And then number 3 is really preparation for market launch. And here you can see that we have really intensified the work with market penetration and preparation in the US this year. We have set up an office in Palo Alto in the heart of Silicon Valley, just a 10-minute walk from Stanford University. So this is where also we have our US hub and where we are now spending a lot of time in order to work with the right key opinion leaders and experts within the field in the US. We have also, after this Q3 report was released, we have founded our Neola Medical Inc. So our American company is now also in place. And this is especially important for us as we're now doing a lot of clinical studies on the ground in the US. We also need to be based in the US for insurance reasons and risk management. So very exciting times ahead for Neola Medical. If we're looking specifically at the Q3 and the main topics for this quarter, I would like to really emphasize that we now have the final results from the clinical study that was made in Ireland by an independent Irish research team of neonatologists at Infant Centre at the University Hospital of Cork. We were present at a conference that's called GENS conference in Rome here in September, where the study data was presented in final for the very first time. And it was a very exciting results coming out of this independent research. It actually showed that Neola, our medical device, measures oxygen in the lungs of 100% of the 100 participating babies in the study, meaning that all of the babies participating in the study, Neola could measure oxygen, which is then really a key performance factor for our instrument, and it really shows that the technology works. So this is the best data that we could possibly get, and we feel very confident now with the technology. What is also important from the presentation is that the independent research team now confirms our technologies, our gas mask technology, as a non-invasive, safe, and well-tolerated technology also for preterm born babies. So despite that the studies focused on newborn healthy babies, the data from the research shows that this is such a safe technology that is very well tolerated also for the preterm born babies. So this was very important for us, as this is the first official data that we have that this is a very safe technology for the preterm-born babies. And that it's non-invasive. It's important within the field of neonatology, as that means that it's not breaking any skin barrier, that it's very safe for the incredibly sensitive skin for the babies. What was also a very pleasant surprise to us was that the research team actually presented data that showed that it's not very important exactly where to place the probes on the baby's skin and placement of the lungs, because there's a very large space for the neonatologist to place the probes on the babies. And still get a great technical signal. What that means in practice is that it shows that the Neola will be easy to integrate into the existing neonatal intensive care, because it's not so sensitive exactly where to place the probes. So the doctor can be quite flexible on the placement of the probes, depending on what other type of probes that are on the baby's chest, and also the size of the baby. So this is very encouraging results coming out of the IRIS study. We feel very confident with now that we have a technology that is now, with this data, a proven technology. And it gives us a lot of, I would say, wind in the sails, because this is data that is now going to be published in all the major publications within neonatology and read by all neonatologists within the field. So it's very encouraging news. The other significant event in Q3 is that we have been elected by Stanford an Impact One company. And what that means in practice is that Stanford's medical team within what's called biodesign, so where all the neonatologists and doctors within children health are at in the Stanford community, they have initiated a special program that is funded by the FDA and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, in order to help more technology companies come into the field of children's health and have more technology coming to patients in the US. So this is an action now that we can see both from Stanford, who are #1 in neonatology in the world, and the FDA, who are very focused on technology innovation for children, that they're coming together in this program that is now fully financed for 5 years to come, in order to have a very clear path for companies like us to come to the US market. So what that means for us is that Stanford has put down their foot and said that Neola and Neola Medical is one of the most promising innovations within the neonatal intensive care field right now. So only that is fantastic news for the company. What it also then gives us in practice is access to a very exclusive network of experts within the FDA and Stanford, and also then surrounding the Stanford and FDA community. So here we have a full team of neonatologists associated with Stanford, regulatory experts, and new innovation experts that we have now been working with for a couple of months on a regular basis in order to really just make sure that our route to market is as fast as it can possibly be. So in practice, that means that neonatologists from Stanford is now participating in our FDA meetings, which of course gives us the top key opinion leaders within the field that is now participating with us, supporting us in the discussions with the FDA about our studies. But also it gives access to an informal forum with the FDA, where we, together with the Stanford neonatologists, have been able to have informal conversation offline with the FDA, where we have more in a freely discussion been able to really talk to the key people within the FDA and children's care on the best way to approach our studies in order to come to market as fast as possible. So that is something that I personally believe will really speed up our journey to market. This is very exciting news. We will be working with the Stanford team for years to come now. If you want to hear more from a Stanford neonatologist that you see here on the picture, Janine Fursch, there is a fantastic video on our website where she talks about what she thinks that Neola will be able to do for the preterm-born babies in her care in the US. And I was in the US, in Palo Alto, participating in a conference at Stanford just a few weeks ago. And here, Janine Fursch, who is then the head clinical within neonatology at Stanford Medicine and Children's Health, she said, and you can also hear it in the recorded video, that she actually loves Neola as a neonatologist herself, because what they see today is either then a pneumothorax, so that means a lung collapse, and she doesn't see it today when it happens, but just when all the vital signs of the babies change. So it's really supporting what I talked about earlier, that what the doctor sees on the screens, that major abrupt shift that we then see below seconds it happens, will alert the neonatologist to really take action and not have to wait until all the vital signs of the babies have shut down. And then also Janine talks about the use of X-ray that are also not always so helpful. So it can be very hard to actually understand what's going on in the lungs with just an X-ray. So that's why she also really liked to understand the oxygenation in the lungs and the lung volume, so meaning how the lungs expand. So it's really the technology from Neola is really fitting very well into what the neonatologist at Stanford is expressing that they really need. We're in a very small group, Impact 1 group at Stanford. So we're have been maximum 40 people, just a few companies, and we are the only selected company from Europe. So a very exclusive group here that gets fantastic support from the Stanford community. And with that, I'm leaving over to CFO Christian Gyllenberg to talk more about our financial summary for the quarter.
Thank you, Hanna. Hi. Traditionally, the third quarter is a period when our expenses are lower due to the holiday period, which results in minimal costs, particularly in consultancy fees and materials. This trend has continued this year. Total expenses are consistent with the previous year, while cash flow has improved due to a positive impact from changes in working capital. From the start of the year, we are on track with our financial plan, with most cost drivers stemming from the purchase of parts for Neola and internal personnel costs related to the development. Last year's expenses were more heavily weighted towards external consultancy fees. There have been no significant changes in the list of the top 10 largest shareholders. It remains the same individuals and institutions as a quarter ago. Despite a volatile stock market overall, we have observed an increase in trading volumes of our share, coupled with a decreased spread, which we view positively as it enhances the opportunities for both existing and new shareholders to trade shares. And that was all from the financial side.
Great, thank you so much, Christian. And I'm sure that if there are more questions about our financials, that you can just also write them in the chat and or send by email, and we will address them as well. So we're now in a very exciting last phase with several upcoming inflection points for our companies. As you can see here now, we have done a lot of studies and data. We feel very confident about the technology of Neola. We now also have the research data from the Irish study that is going to be published. And now we're entering a phase that is really all about coming to market. So what we have in front of us now are a series of studies that we're doing for regulatory purposes to get approval with the FDA. The first one that we're now in a very detailed planning for is our preclinical study that we will do in Copenhagen in the very beginning of next year. It is a study on piglets where we can show all the performance measurements for Neola. Doing a performance study on piglets is very well accepted by the FDA. We have had now very detailed discussions with the FDA as well about our study. So we're now feel quite confident about the study design and the performance of the study. We're doing this study at the Veterinary Sciences of Copenhagen, where they have the leading experts in the world for a neonatal piglet model that is very well replicated as a preterm-born infant. So here we will have participating from the research team, a professor in neonatology, several neonatology doctors, and several doctors within veterinary sciences. The other study that we have also been discussing with the FDA in very much detail this year is our human factor study that we're going to do in the US next year. A human factor study is a study where we're trying out Neola in the formal care in the neonatal intensive care unit, making sure that it works perfect in the workflow of nurses and doctors and respiratory therapists. So this is a very important study that we are showing that with successful study results from the human factor study, that there will be no issues integrating Neola in the care of preterm-born babies. And it's a study that is going to focus on neonatal intensive care nurses in the US setting. Then the third and maybe most important and exciting study is the study on preterm-born infants that we're going to do in the US next year as well, starting in Q1 of 2024. It is an observatory study, which means that it is a safety study where we are placing the probes of Neola on the baby's chest in their usual setting in neonatal intensive care, and let Neola monitor what happens with the baby's lungs over a couple of hours. So this is a very important study showing that Neola is safe for the babies to use, but of course it's also going to give us a lot of data of the different lung complications that these babies suffer from. Our clinical partners for this study is yet to be announced, but we are in negotiations with, I would say, top neonatologists and top hospitals in the US. So a lot of exciting inflection points now coming up already for Q1 and Q2 of next year. And with that, I really want to thank everyone who has followed our journey for a couple of years and seen our continuous development. Deadlines and inflation points are very important to us. And now we continue to see that it's all going in the very right direction, and we're now finalizing the planning of the last couple of studies here now before we can start selling Neola in Europe and the US. So very, very exciting times to come. And just a few last comments of our financial calendar. We are releasing our Q4 report 14th of February next year. We have another annual report then being published 9th of April next year. And then I would like to extend a very warm invitation to the 22nd of May. Please do mark that in your calendars in order to visit us at Neola Medical for our General Assembly. So with that, I leave over to you, Christian, and I know that there's been a few questions coming in as well.
Yes, we have received 3 questions on beforehand, and I would say that you have answered them all in this presentation, but just to review them again, can you please explain what the Impact 1 program is and what future benefits Neola Medical can have by being a part of the program? I think you extensively covered that in the presentation.
I can just summarize it in a few words. So Impact 1 is an initiative founded by Stanford neonatologists and the FDA in order to have more technology innovation coming to babies, because they see that this is a field that is significantly underinvested, and there is a lack of technology innovation to come to improve the health of children, and that we have now been selected as one of very, very few companies, the only European companies, in order then to participate in this program is because Stanford and the FDA wants to make sure that we have all supports we can possibly get in order to come to market shortly. So that's the aim of the program. And Impact 1 stands for companies who are able to make an impact day one as they're coming to the patient's care.
And the next question was, what is the next step study-wise after the study on the 100 babies? And then we talked about the piglet study coming up in Copenhagen, and then also the human factor study in the US as the 2 significant ones.
Exactly, and followed by that, we have then the clinical study on preterm born babies that is also going to be in the US. It's going to be a smaller study, so yet to announce how many babies and things like details like that. But it's we're very excited about the potential collaborations we have now coming up, and I feel confident about that the start of this study will be able to be made shortly in 2024.
And then we also had a question where we are in the FDA process, and you covered that also in the presentation.
Just to give a bit more than details on that questions. So we are in a so-called de novo regulatory process. So we're going to send in a de novo application to the US Food and Drug Administration. What that means, a de novo stands for completely new innovation. So this is a track that is only for companies who have new innovation where there There are no data from any other company or innovation beforehand. So that's why we are being treated separately. What we also have then the potential to do as we're following this de novo track is then, of course, also to set the standard of this new technology and how it's going to be used in the field. So I would say being in a de novo process, yes, it's a bit challenging because you have no other studies to base your studies on, but it's also a fantastic opportunity as we're now setting the standard for this technology to come.
Great, thank you. That was the questions we had on beforehand. I haven't seen that we have received anyone from the audience. And with that.
So with that, thank you so much for listening and for following the company's journey. I look forward to welcome you here at the office as well in Lund for 22nd of May. Have a really great day.